In the past, I've gotten myself into plenty of trouble discussing my experiences with products that come from the same batch of product that is being shipped out to everybody. Nothing special. I'm not getting it direct from the company. It's just coming directly from that same batch that's going out to everybody that's buying it. This may be one of those instances because this goggle that I have has one fatal flaw which makes it completely unusable, beyond unusable, makes it incredibly unsafe to use. That flaw is that the latency is about a third of a second. It's almost like flying a Phantom. It's so much that you can't, or I don't know, I can't find any settings to turn off or what might be causing the latency. I've tried different modules. I've tried rapid fire. I've tried a Foxeer module on the left, on the right, whatnot. I can't really budge the latency. It just has latency in mind. I don't know if there's a software update or I mean, I looked, but I couldn't find anything. I just got them, so I'm assuming they're up to date, or maybe not. But I don't know what's happening. If anybody knows what may be the problem, why mine has this latency, because I've watched snippets of other reviewers and they haven't mentioned that this goggle is essentially unusable because of the latency. And I'm really just making this video asking for help because I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. But if we skip that aspect of these goggles, this goggle is still not something I might recommend. But really quick, let me go over the goggle itself. So this is the Eachine, the newest Eachine goggle. It has dual diversity receivers. I don't know why we need dual diversity receivers, but the little OSC display that it shows the different antennas and what's getting good signal, it actually is nice. I like looking at that. The fit of it is pretty good because it comes with a bunch of different foam attachments to change the shape of the backside of the goggles to fit your goggles. The only issue with the fit, which is really a deal breaker for me, but it might not be probably isn't a deal breaker for most people. If you have probably a medium to medium large nose or anything bigger, these goggles won't fit your face at all. You won't be able to get the goggles low enough on your face to be able to see through the lenses and see the screens. And speaking of the lenses, they are even smaller than the lenses on Orca or Fat Sharks, which both have the same size lenses, and both still crop the corners of the screen. Now, the screen size in this goggle is not as big as the ones in the Fat Sharks or the Orca. I think the screen size is totally suitable, as totally fine. The problem is that you can't see the entire screen yet again with these optics. I've had this issue with every single goggle I've used except for the Dominator V3, which is the ones that I used for the longest period of time. They all crop or distort or do something with the edges of the screen. I'm not really sure why these companies don't just make the actual optics larger so that the sweet spot is just bigger. And even if you can see the corners of the screen, if your eyes are even a little bit off center, it's completely blurry. The good news is that these lenses do have this adjustment where you can focus each eye and move each eye's IPD adjustment as well, which I do like a lot. But it's not really super necessary to have that individual eye focus, but then again, I do have good vision, so I can't really appreciate the issues that other people might have. Also, on top of that, there is the ability to use diopters, which I believe the Fat Sharks don't have that ability to use diopters anymore. They just have the individual eye focus. It's nice that they added both options. I just wish the lenses were a little bit bigger. The DVR is pretty useless, but I think that has a lot to do with the module that's being used in the goggles. The fan on the goggles is, well, it's useless because it just doesn't record properly, but again, that might just be a software thing. The fan on the goggles actually works. It's about as effective as the Fat Shark goggles. It's more effective than the Orca goggles, as are the Fat Shark goggles. It's really the only downside of the Orca is that the fan just doesn't really do much. The very best thing I could say about these goggles is that the screen is absolutely gorgeous. Previously, LCOS was not a technology that should have really been used in goggles for this weird color wheel effect where you get this chromatic aberration stuff, and it just wasn't really nice to look at, in my opinion, to my eyes. A lot of people didn't have any problems with it. But these goggles, I mean, the screen has so much depth, it's so vibrant, it's so bright, it's so glorious to watch. It looks like the resolution is infinite. It doesn't look like it has pixels at all. The screen is drastically nicer to view than both the Orcas or the Fat Sharks or any OLED goggle that we've seen to this point. I mean, it really is a beautiful screen to look at, and the screen size is totally appropriate as well. It's just really unfortunate that, number one, the fit isn't really good for people with noses at all. Number two, the lenses are just a little bit too small to actually see the entire screen. And number three, the latency, which totally destroys the product. And stay tuned, I guess, because there might be an update to this if I do resolve or solve or find out what the solution to the latency issue that my pair of goggles actually has. That being said, I still can't use them because it doesn't quite fit on my nose, but I'll try to do something to get it to work properly. I can sort of see most of the screen, but I have to like float it over my nose and on top of my eyes. One more thing that I forgot to talk about. So there is a value proposition to think about when buying any pair of goggles really above $200. Honestly, any pair of goggles above $120 really. If you're spending more than about $120, $150, I know it's a lot more money to jump to the highest end goggles, which are from $500 to $600 plus a module sometimes. But note that this is a product that you don't change very often. And there has been a lot of developments in a lot of other fronts and a lot of things that I've learned as well since the last goggle video. And so DJI has really come up. Their software has gotten just so much better, and their goggles really work nicely. The DJI goggles still don't fit anybody's head properly. There are some foam attachments that help with that, but they still don't really fit. And now they have an analog mode, which I have tested, and it works. It's just like this weird menu in the side that if you by accident click a button, you just don't see anything anymore if you're flying analog. So it's a little bit sketchy to fly with analog, but it's really nice to fly with analog. The experience is not better than the Orcas or the Fat Sharks, but it's good enough to be suitable to use for analog if the goggles actually fit your head, which is the real issue with those DJI goggles. And so you really have to think about the value proposition of spending any money on goggles, because if you're going to spend $200 plus, $300 plus dollars, it's not a huge leap to spend the extra $150, I think, for the DJI goggles. And I know that Orca are working on some really interesting things, and I also believe, based on the details that I've learned about how the DJI stuff works, I think that it is not impossible for us to see an HD module from DJI or from another company. I don't know if it'll happen. It's more of a political business decision for them, but I don't see it being impossible completely based on what's inside the goggles and what seems to be required for the goggles to function with the DJI signal. So do what you will with that. It's interesting to think about this dilemma. A lot of people have already switched completely over to DJI, and they just don't use analog anymore, or they just use the DJI analog, which again does work great. It's just that it's in a little funny sub menu that I wish they would just make a main mode. Take care. Floss your teeth. Bye.